If you're nearing the end of your time. And another note is these microphones are awesome, but you gotta put them really close to your mouth like this, and you can just talk at a normal volume instead of yelling, just like that, right? So we're also recording for Channel 17, streaming live on YouTube, also pretty cool. And that's all I've got for announcements. Charlie is going to be moderating this session, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, I also want to thank some other people. Of course, we have to thank especially Janet and the entire crew from the kitchen that puts on the wonderful dinner that we have each month, and I know everyone that loves it. The second person is Ethan Waldman, who's up here playing the guitar for such a long period of time. So Ethan Waldman, that adds so much atmosphere to what happens here, even though everybody kind of ignores him, but it adds wonderful atmosphere, in my opinion, to the dinner. So I really appreciate Ethan playing tonight. I also want to thank Ben for setting up all the camera and the microphones. And I especially want to thank at least 3 high school students over here who are very generously spending their time recording tonight's meeting. That's great. That's wonderful. More community leaders arriving on the scene. Okay. So, without further ado, I think the next agenda item is a public forum. So, does anyone have anything in the announcements, comments, issues? We're looking for 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes apiece. So, does anyone have anything that they'd like to talk about? Just push it all the way up.
You got to be smarter than the average microphone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Hughes. I'm in Ward 1. Thank you for having me in your house tonight. This is the best NPA in the city. I am here representing Justice for All, a racial justice organization. We're addressing systemic racism as well as poverty here in the city. I've been in the city for about a year now, and we've been doing the same thing for 4 years down in central Vermont. And I just wanted to make you aware of a couple of things really quickly. Number one, please come to our birthday party. It's on the 19th, and you can check this out over on justiceforallvt.org. It's on the 19th of October, and it starts at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. And it goes until 9. It's over at Studio A, North End Studio A, right? Right, Ben? You know the place, 294, right? Okay, so that's one thing I wanted to make you aware of. I'm just going to give you just a couple more, and then I'm going to get out of here. The other thing is in October on the 13th, which is Sunday, just like we do every second Sunday, we're doing a film viewing, and this one is called Fruitvale Station. And it's about the story of Oscar Grant. Please stop in on us. It's at 3 p.m. at the First Congregational Church. That's at 38 South Winooski. Okay? Just go like this. Okay, it's at 38 South Winooski. And that's at 3 p.m. It goes to 6. There's a short discussion after that. And that's every second Sunday at the same time. As there is an event called Game On. And you can imagine what that is. Bring your board games. It's every 4th Sunday in the same location at the same time, okay? And finally is just a couple of other things. Is just a systemic racism, origin, impact, and solutions. 16th of October in the same location at 6:30 p.m. That's systemic racism, origins, impact, and solutions. 16 October. That's in the same location. That's at 6:30 on the 16th of October, and a look inside mass incarceration is down in Jericho on the 22nd at the Lutheran church down there where Reverend Arnold Thomas is. Yeah, so thanks for that. The Use of Force Forum. The Use of Force Forum is also at the same location, the First Congregational Church. It's on the 24th. At 6:30 at the same time. And we will be doing these events all month next month, the next month, as we've been doing every month since this month. So thank you for your time, thank you for your attention. I have 15 seconds left.
Anyone else? Go ahead. Go ahead.
My name is Christy Delphia, and as you can see by my little tag here, I am from the Burlington Tenants Union. We are a newly formed union. We are here for the help of tenants. You can get a hold of us on our Facebook page, Burlington Tenants Union, and we also have burlingtontenantsunion.com. We help tenants by BTV renters on Instagram as well. Thank you for that. We help tenants by letting them know what their rights are, how to get the landlords that they are renting from to repair their properties, and we will help write letters. We will go to their landlords and we will protest for them. We are also doing informational pickets on the worst landlords in the city. Our next one coming up is actually Handy Court, and that's going to be on Halloween night. So if anybody would like to join us, we are going to be at Handy Court doing this picket. What was it? The time was what? We said what, 4:30? Probably around 3:30 to 5 on that night. So if anybody would like to join us, you are more than welcome. And if you would like, I have information here as well, and I will hand it out if you would like to take some.
Hey everyone, I talked to, I think, most of you about this already, but I just want to make sure everyone hears that the Vermont Workers Center, I'm a member of the Vermont Workers Center, and we're having an event here next week at 6 o'clock. It's going to be a community meal and also a forum about healthcare. So we are in the middle of a campaign to get universal healthcare in Vermont and to protect Medicaid. And so this is an event where people will be sharing their personal stories about healthcare, and then also if you want to learn a little more about the fight for universal healthcare. So I hope you all will join us. I've been handing out flyers, so if anyone wants one, come see me. And there's also a Facebook event where you can see a little more there too.
Hello, my name is Sean Malin. I'm with the Old North End Arts and Business Network, and we're hiring. We're hiring an economic development coordinator that will work. I'll just read it from the thing. The economic development coordinator will be an independent contractor working under the direction of the ONE-ABN volunteer leadership team, some of whom are here, to support and market a network of businesses and artists in Burlington's Old North End. The coordinator will connect with business owners and in the ONE, plan, develop, and execute a marketing plan for the ONE-ABN, and maintain the website, etc. It's a pretty exciting job. It's a great way if you love the Old North End and love the mix of business and resident in the Old North End. It's a great way to be a part of that. And also, you may know about our Old North End Challenge that we ran. Does anybody remember that? Like, started on the Ramble? I have two people who have not picked up their prizes yet, and I'm wondering if you either are here or know these people. Keanu Von Diaz, maybe? Or Chris Mai, M-A-I is the last name. So come see me. And also, if you want to know more about the position, please come see me. I have a flyer with the description, or look us up on Front Porch Forum. Thanks a lot.
Oh yeah. So I always want to announce an event that is happening on the 29th of October. It is regarding how to make our water rates more income sensitive in Burlington, because as we attempt to clean up the lake, there will be a need for rate increases, and this is a way to try to factor in ability to pay into our water rates. So the The event is in Contois Auditorium on Tuesday the 29th from 6 to 8. It is there'll be different sort of stations within the space in Contois Auditorium where information will be provided, but also gathering public input. So it'll be a two-way exchange. I hope folks can come. This is an important next step in trying to address the fact that we're going to see probably annual rate increases on our water bills. And so we're trying to address the issue of affordability for low income and low volume water users so that they don't bear the brunt of this cost of cleaning up, so that higher users are paying basically higher fees, higher prices. Say the what? Yeah, that's at 6 o'clock on the 29th of October at Contois Auditorium. It'll go for about 2 hours. It's the Burlington Water Resources, which is the division of the Department of Public Works, and the director of that division lives right in this neighborhood. So she handed me this on the way in and asked me to please announce it. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Megan Humphrey, and I run a nonprofit called Hands. And the next event that's coming up is a big Christmas Day delivery all over the county. The mission of Hands is to get food to low-income seniors, and we're going to be delivering 700 meals, hot meals, and gift bags. So there are lots of ways that we need help, whether it's volunteering or stuff for the gift bags or donations. So the website's handsvt.org, and I have some brochures, and I would love any help. And also, it's Sean's birthday today.
Thank you, Megan. Although I'll tell you right now, she normally doesn't need volunteers because so many people are interested in working with that organization to get those meals out. So, but anyways, please volunteer and please donate. You're welcome. Anyone?
Over here.
Hi, my name is Austin. I live in Ward 8. Thank you for having me here. This is awesome. I am also a member of the Burlington Tenants Union. And in broad strokes, the Tenants Union is an effort at getting tenants together to talk about our issues, to build our power in a relatively precarious position that we tend to be in. And the biggest sort of upcoming event that we've got going on is the Burlington Tenants Summit, which is going to be the first ever Tenants Summit really by and for tenants here in the city of Burlington. And that's going to be on the first Sunday in November. The first Sunday in November is going to be November 3rd, and it's going to be at Fletcher Free Public Library. That's going to be in the Fletcher Room. This is an event designed organized for and by tenants to talk about our issues, to really center the conversation on like what do we need and what are we struggling to achieve, stability and the basic right to housing. So additional important things that you want to know. It starts at 12:30 p.m. It's going to be in the Fletcher Room. Food Not Bombs, there's an active chapter of Food Not Bombs here in Burlington that you may know about. They've been serving meals on Sundays in City Hall Park, no longer possible, but they're serving meals on Church Street now, and they're going to be providing a meal on the 3rd of November in Fletcher Free, or at Fletcher Free, probably outside, depending on the weather. And there will also be childcare provided. So parents, more than welcome, encouraged. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Lees. You'll be excited to learn that a certain Burlington political leader has joined forces with the Trump administration to bring us the F-35 to our airport. We've got the first two of them here. And it's really going to be damaging to children. It's already being severely criticized by people in the flight path who say it's much, much louder than the F-16. So why is our political leadership collaborating with the Trump administration to bring the F-35? It's a danger, it's injuring, it's a human rights violation, and it's just the first two. 18 more are coming. We've got to speak up, speak out, and get these political leaders out of office as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. And I also like to thank the residents of Burlington who took the time to go to the South Burlington City Council meeting this week to talk about the very issue, F-35s.
Yeah, hi, Tony Reddington, and thank you. I'm one of those folks who's fortunate to rent in the Old North End, and I have no lease at all, and so I sort of hoping that I'll still be able to live there 3 or 4 months from now. Anyway, that's an example of what it's like to live here in Burlington with a private landlord. I basically want to announce that there's going to be a meeting, basically there's going to be an educational event next Wednesday. It's the third part of a series of educational activities by the Vermont Institute of Community and International Involvement, headed by Sandy Beard, who was a professor of political science at Burlington College before that college was killed a couple of years ago in our neighborhood. And it's going to be held upstairs at 6 o'clock at the Vermont, the African Americans living in Vermont offices. And the first two subjects were the stealing of Burlington Telecom from us as a public group by the mayor and the city council. And the second one was a hole in the ground. They're contemporary issues. And next Wednesday, the subject is going to be the formation and the activities of the Coalition for Livable City, which, by the way, helped the F-35 effort, petition effort, when they were looking for a place to work from. And that's going to be 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. The subject is going to be, the Coalition for Livable City, which actually started at Barbara Bagru's dining room table. She actually knows about the beginning. I'm also going to be speaking, and so will Andy Simon. We invite you to go. The first one was on Channel 17, was the taking of Burlington Telecom. The big dig, or it's going to be the big hole in the ground, has been recorded. There'll be a transcript, and hopefully we'll get Barbara on TV this next Wednesday. Again, next Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. It shouldn't be missed.
So we have a new community organizer. So what's your name? Can you tell me your name? She was ready to go a minute ago. Tony took too much time.
Hi. It's close. So I just want to say, so Janet is back there, and she's likely not going to come out for this, but she won last week at City Market. She won the Community Service Award for her work. Yeah, for her work for the community dinner.
Hey. Nice.
And I'm sure, as Janet said in her wonderful acceptance speech, it's not just about Janet, it's about the whole crew and the whole community dinner family. And I'll say from my perspective, I've been coming for 3 years, and I told Janet last week at the dinner, the other dinner, that it's really changed my life being here and being able to meet people and to have access to our community. And I really thank Janet for that, for helping me become more a part of the community. And I also say, once again, because I don't think, Janet is wonderful, but I don't think this is what they necessarily do great at, is that they do lay out the money for the meals. So just remember that, and I'm guilty of this the past 2 months in that I didn't bring money, but they do lay out the money. I know. They do lay out the money. So if you do have money to donate, know that sometimes they do have to pay for some of it. So not only they're donating all their time, they are putting out money. So not to guilt anyone, so if you don't have it, that's fine. Some people are giving $20, but if you do have it, just try to remember at some point. And please, let's thank Janet again.
And one way we can all help Janet, by the way, is to bus up all your dirty dishes so that they don't have to come looking for them. So if you could do that. It's wonderful to see so many people brought their own utensils and vessels and all that stuff. Any other announcements or comments?
Yeah, actually, I was just going to add to that. The volunteer crew stays here and finishes up the dishes, and they're sometimes the last people out. So if you're done with whatever, even if it's not in front of you. That would be helpful. What I've been trying to do every month is give people updates on the building. And according to the construction company, they should be finished in here early to mid-November with what's called phase 2 of stabilizing this building and trying to bring it up to code and environmental standards and everything else. And I don't know if you've ever tried to renovate your house while living in it, but that's what it's been like here. This place has been a beehive of activity around a construction project where they usually have very strict rules about being in the middle of construction. So they've had to work off hours a lot of times to get stuff done in here. They're almost, you can actually see we have air conditioning for the first time in 2 years, which is nice. And the lights, none of these have controls yet, so it's a mystery how everything goes on and off, but that's coming. The windows are all redone. They weren't replaced. They were down here. They were redone to try to keep the old look. And they finally got rid of Mount St. Joseph out here, which was a big dirt pile for a year and a half. They weren't sure if it was contaminated, so now it's just a slight ski slope. But it will be by next year. It'll be a usable place for events. And we got this place back the middle of September. And you've heard a number of events that are already planned in here, which is great. I mean, people are really picking up on the fact that this is a very flexible space. We recently heard about a project, BHS is doing a mural, and apparently they're going to try to lay it out down here so they can get the work done no matter what. So that's kind of cool. So anything you can think of, you know anybody who's interested in doing events here, let us know.
I guess that concludes the community forum. Welcome to this monthly meeting. My name is John Vickery, and I'm the Burlington City Assessor. And we are in the beginning of a citywide revaluation, which was a mandated revaluation by the state of Vermont Tax Department. The last revaluation, valuation change of every property in the city of Burlington was 14 years ago, so it was a long time ago, and so we are overdue. So I want to give you a couple points about this reappraisal, and that way you will be informed. So we are going to be adjusting the current values to market. Right now they're approximately 75% of market. The valuations will be as of April 1st, 2021, so it's a 2-year project. And there will be an opportunity for all residential property owners to visit our office and meet with the assessors and the appraisers that were involved in the project to make sure that we have the information correct. That's our goal. We have hired Tyler Technologies, is an appraisal firm. They're all over the country, and they have a team of appraisers that will be here on site in the next few weeks. We've already given them a lot of property data and information and sale information and so forth. They will have folks that will be doing inspections, but not inspections of every property. So your property may be inspected, it might not be inspected, but the appraisers are certified appraisers. They've had background checks, and they'll be wearing identification. So we want you to know that as well. There's information on our website about this project as well. It's all been updated. A little over a week and a half ago, we mailed letters to all the property owners, all the residential property owners, I should say, regarding announcement of this revaluation. And also, on the back side of the page was information about your particular property. So we would appreciate that if everyone could bring that form back to us. It can be mailed, it can be PDF through an email, or it can just be dropped off. What we want to do is we want to have the data to be correct, and we want to correct all the errors with everyone's property. So please do that. That would be greatly appreciated. I'm looking at my notes here. I'm cheating. It looks like I've covered just about everything. I'm going to jump to a question that will be asked, I'm sure. How will this impact my property value? Well, I want to explain a couple things. The market has performed very well over the past 14 years, and so values are undervalued by and large. The appreciation in property values has not been uniform. Different property types have appreciated at different rates, and different locations have appreciated at different rates as well. So there is an inequity, and that's what we're taking care of. We're taking care of it also because we're mandated to take care of that inequity. So when values are changed, we're going to have a grand list that will be at approximately $4.8 billion. And right now it's about $3.8 billion. So that's a lot more value. The tax rate will drop so that the tax bills, or the amount that the city collects, will be about equal to what it was the year before. There might be some adjustments from approvals of a higher budget and so forth, but by and large, it's not a windfall of additional tax revenues because assessments are higher. That's the purpose of the reappraisal, is to bring everybody back to a level playing field, and that's what we really need to do. So that, remember that the tax rate will drop. I'm estimating the tax rate will drop. Right now it's at 84 cents per hundred of value, and it'll drop down to about 68 cents per hundred of value as the property values go up. So I hope I explained that well, but I'm happy to dive into it deeper, and I want to take the rest of the time to answer any questions that people have.
So what does a typical inspection of a single-family home or a duplex look like?
Well, if your property is deemed to be inspected, the property inspector should walk to the door, introduce themselves, and then they will ask to take a look at the outside first, and then they would ask to go inside. The inspection inside is a walkthrough. Typically, our office, we try to keep things, have a standard process, and it's a walking from the basement up to the attic, so to speak. It's not getting into every nook and cranny, but it's getting a general sense of the amenities, the condition, the quality of workmanship and materials used, and they get that information. What they should be doing is saying, if they're writing on a piece of paper that has the property data already, they should show you where they've made corrections and before they leave. Okay? Yes.
How do you think this will impact people who rent when our property owners, the people who own the property there, what they have to pay goes up? How will that affect our rents?
Right. That's a good question. So rent is typically driven by market forces, supply and demand, and there will be a change in, not a dramatic change, but a change in the expenses on a landlord. Several years ago, we adjusted the apartment properties because there was an inequity with them, and so they should see pretty much a relatively uniform change compared to other types of property, meaning that the tax burden on the property owner will be about the same as it was. And therefore, I don't envision unless there's something wrong with the current assessment, that this would be a big impact on the property owner and therefore the tenant. But that's a very good question. Sir?
I'm gonna go. Hi, I'm over here. Sorry. Oh, can't see me? I'm over here. I'll stand up. Hey, I got your form. I got your form on the back, and it showed that all the ratings of our house and everything, and it all looked good. Do you still want us to send that form back to you, even if there's no changes to it?
Yes.
Okay.
But if you don't, we won't hunt you down.
Okay. And then next question, and I might not use all the right words. We got a assessment or inspection or what have you in the last 2 years. Is this basically the same thing over again, or are those two different things?
The assessment 2 years ago was probably due from renovations, permits, and so forth. So it's not likely, since the information on your particular property is relatively accurate, probably is pretty good, that there won't be a team or a person stopping at your house, knocking on your door and asking for an inspection or setting up an appointment with you. You're probably fine. That's as close to a promise as I can get. Hi. Yes.
So what do you think the percentage of the city is going to be inspected, either residential versus apartments?
10 to 15%.
Steve? Are any properties going to be assessed on an income generating basis, or is it only going to be the condition of the property?
Investor-owned properties, we value them by the income approach to value. So we look at the income stream. The condition is considered as well. And if a property is in poor condition, that usually affects the income stream. So it will be valued by the cost approach, which takes into effect the overall condition, but we are going to be using the income approach as the final value.
Your typical apartment building, which way will you go with those?
The income approach to value.
Not the condition as much.
Well, condition is a consideration, but yes, it's the cash flows of the property that bring value.
Yeah, I was wondering, this is an assessment of residential properties. Is there any plan to reassess commercial properties?
Yes, all properties in Burlington are going to be reassessed, even exempt properties.
Will the hi? Will the effect of F-35 noise be part of the consideration of the property value?
Yeah, so that depends. We typically, if there's something, a negative influence on a particular property, or even a positive influence on a particular property, we will recognize that through sales of those properties within that area. And so if sales are affecting that, our values are based on sales, and there will be an adjustment for based on the sold properties.
So I guess the answer is no then, except for whether that has affected the sale price of properties nearby.
Yeah, we're legally bound to adjust properties for what they'll sell for. So we have to wait for sales and see if sales are affecting a property in a negative way or a area in a negative way, and we would adjust values based on that.
Okay.
Could you speak to what a property owner would do if they feel that the assessment the city comes up with is not correct?
Yes. Yes, we want the public to be involved. Not all at once after me, but what we'd like is to have the public involved now. So that's why we sent out the letters asking for, can we correct some of this property data? I'm hoping that down the road that is good. We're hoping that when we have preliminary values that we put them online for everyone to see, and that property owners can also see their neighbors' valuations as well. In addition to that, there will be a time period in July of 2021 for taxpayers to come visit the folks that have applied those values as sort of a further check on the valuation. It's called an informal hearing. Number one, we want the factual information to be correct, the right amount of square feet, the amenities, the quality condition, and so forth. And if there's still a dispute between, hey, this is what I have, but I still think the value is not correct, there's a process, a public process to change that. I should call that a property owner process because it's an individual process, not a group.
How is the low-income status or retirement status of the property owner taken into consideration?
Well, when we value properties, we're following law, and that's to value it based on its market value. The state has what they call, for eligible people that reside in the primary domicile, to qualify for the homestead reduction. And so that is, in Burlington, it's a lower tax rate if you live at your property. And then there's also an income sensitivity adjustment, I think they used to call it, on everybody's tax bill. That'll still take effect even when the values are new.
Would you like that?
Can you talk a little bit about those of us that are part of Champlain Housing Trust supply and what that entails? And then second, if we're getting ready to do a renovation, how does that tie in with being assessed or appraised?
I'll start off with the first part of that question. How does this affect folks that are in the Champlain Housing Program? And what that program is a financing program where the value, part of the equity remains with Champlain Housing Trust and part of it remains with the property owner. And therefore, we value just the property owner's portion of the property. So there's an adjustment to all of those. And all of the ones that we have currently, I think there's probably about 230 of them. They're all lowered right now. So when we conduct the citywide revaluation, we'll be using the same factors that we did. That's not going to go away. That's our process. The second part of the question?
About renovations and like if you show up a day before we started construction versus months after we started construction?
Yeah, right. Well, we hope we show up. Well, values are as of April 1st. Each year. And if there's been some renovations before April 1st, that should be included in the assessment. Just as the same way if someone were gutting a house, we might do a reduction in their assessment. And was there a question over
here? John, did you say you're doing 10 to 15% of the properties?
We're going to be doing all the properties, but we're likely to only visit about 10 to 15%.
So how do you do one without visiting it? Every property will have a new assessment.
There's a lot of techniques to finding valuation, and there's a lot of resources out there. Statistically and analytically, you can get really close to fair market value by never entering a home. But we do want to go to all the homes where there's been renovations. We want to visit every single property that has sold in the recently. We want to, anywhere where we feel that there is some errors and inconsistencies, we want to track those down. We don't feel the need to go into properties that we've looked at in the past several years, especially if there's no outstanding permits and so forth. All properties will be looked at from the exterior. We have imaging techniques that we do where the sketch correction software and so forth. as well as all these a bunch of statistical packages that does this analytical work that, similar to, and it's not always accurate, some of the software, like you have a Zillow where they do a Zestimate. It's not exactly, but it's a little bit like that. We can kind of get closer to the values without having to go into every single one of them.
So some properties right now must be under-assessed and some might be over-assessed. You'll probably tell us very few of those, but there must be some.
There probably is, yeah.
I think I had one once, at least for a few months, was very much over-assessed.
I remember that.
And but the intention is to come out with about the same amount of money that's raised from the property tax.
Well, we're just trying to value the properties appropriately. That's the state law says that's the fairest way to a fair assessment.
I meant citywide, what you take in.
But
It's gonna be-
the amount of money that the city needs to raise is it really doesn't have bearing on the valuations. It's the budget gets passed or readjusted every year. That same budget, it's not a windfall of money just because you have new higher values overall. There's something, a provision called revenue neutrality in the budget. And so the tax rate goes down proportionally to the increase in valuations. And therefore, I'm not guaranteeing that nobody's going to see an increase in their tax bill, but I do know some will, and I do know that others will have no increase in their tax bill, and then some people will be approximately the same.
Okay, so the last question as Jennifer and Darren come forward.
If the valuators during a visit find code violations, do they do anything with that? Do they pass that information on to?
All right, you get an award for the toughest question. So, if there is a clear violation, our staff will mention it to the property owner, and so that they have an opportunity to correct that problem. We're not trying to be the police or a different department. The purpose of us is to put on our valuation hats and to have a value to what is actually there, what's existing, and so forth. It's not about trying to make people's lives difficult.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. And any further questions, don't hesitate to contact the city at the city assessor's office. Thank you, John Vickers. So, Amanda, what are you suggesting we do? Agenda item, city council update. Okay, so city councilors, are you prepared to do an update? Is Brian still here? Are you interested in doing a city council update? Sure. On the fly?
Sure, why not?
He's good at it. He wasn't prepared. Like he doesn't have notes.
Okay, the agenda says climate emergency resolution. I think I'll just mention that a couple meetings ago, the council debated for some time a resolution which was really designed to shift our thinking. Our dialogue affects our thinking. Our language, our word choices affect how we think about things. And Will, if you're here, Will was a major advocate for shifting from climate change to climate emergency. So that's something that the council eventually endorsed. And in addition to that, the council endorsed a number of other aspects of, Councilor Freeman put in there a clause which attempted to link the issue of pushing for a climate emergency and mitigating, making the changes we need to make as a society with also providing livable wage jobs to city workers. And I think there's a connection. It was a challenge to get the council to agree that there was a connection, but rather than just abandon that, that is now going to be a piece of work that the administration does for the council, which is who does temporary employment, who does seasonal employment that's not getting a livable wage, who doesn't get a livable wage now, because there are conditions under which a city employee doesn't. Tell us the number of people, what's the impact, what would the impact be if everyone actually, even seasonal folks, got up to the livable wage standard. It's about $15 and change. If you have benefits, it's slightly less. It's about 14 and change if you have benefits. So that resolution passed, so that piece is now in effect. Let me just say the news on City Place, which I believe folks know a little bit about, but I'll just mention that the administration sent a letter to the Brookfield partners, essentially saying a number of things, but the gist of that message was you're behind in your payments to the city, you've got to pay by this date, you have failed to restore the public right-of-way to a safe condition, you need to also come back to the council and inform the community in an open meeting what your plans are and what your changes are to your plans. So they've complied with the payments, they're up to date on their payments to the city. They are in the process of the planning to do the restoration of the public right-of-way, and they're coming to the council on the 28th. So we will know more, but I don't know a whole lot more than that. That's basically the information that we have on that. Non-citizen voting came up on Monday night, and the reporting on this was horrendous because it said that the council basically just approved it and now we're going to go to the legislature and get approval. That's not at all what we just did. So I don't quite know how the reporters missed this, but basically what we said is this issue was voted on in 2015. I thought it was 2014, but I think they said 2015. Voters voted it down, but we believe the conditions are right to revisit this issue, look at it again, sent language to the Charter Change Committee and said, come back to us with a recommendation. So then the next step would be to go back to the voters, have a public education campaign. I personally believe it's the right thing to do. I know there are people who don't. Some constituents contacted me and they're not happy. A couple asked for my resignation because I supported this. I said, I'll see you at the polls on the election day. So there you have it. Other than that, what else? People have any questions or? Yeah.
Let me go because I lost my.
No, they wanted to give you the mic. If you, oh, you don't want, okay.
No, I will actually.
Oh, okay. Is there anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, when you talked about restoring right-of-way with the downtown project, are you referring to connecting Pine Street back up to Pearl, or are you talking about something else?
Talking about the sidewalks that are basically been blocked and the roads that have been blocked.
Because it'd be really great if you could connect up Pine Street while we're
Oh
waiting.
yeah, you're right. Actually, the bathroom in the mall somebody mentioned. That's on the list as well. You're right. That's right. She caught that. The bathroom in the mall will be brought back to. It'll be able to be used again. That's the other piece. Yeah.
Amen.
So, Barb, are you raising your hand over there? Could you pass that?
The thing I wanted to ask a question about is the housing package that I think was passed.
Yes. Yep.
And so I have one item in there that concerns me, which is the removal of the parking requirement for developers downtown. And I want to know what the status of that package is, what passing it means. Is it still going to some committees? Is it coming back? What is it?
That was the big question Monday night because the council resolution laid out 5 or 6 pretty big items that will be worked on. And it's a little unusual to have it. It's kind of like an omnibus bill, which has all this stuff in it. Sometimes when you put too many things on a tree, it falls over, and it seemed like it was going to happen that night, but it didn't. And that one was one of them. So the answer to the parking question is, it is a concept and a proposal right now. The details have not been actually ironed out, but the concept is in the resolution, the way it's stated. I think the council made it pretty clear that nothing will be given as far as parking until something is gotten from the community, for the community in terms of an alternative transportation, basically like a trust fund for alternative transportation to support pedestrian, bicycle, and maybe hopefully even transit. So in other words, if there is a waiver, you got to pay a fee to offset the fact that you're not required to provide as much parking.
Okay, I won't debate it here, but thanks for the clarification.
Still, there's a lot of time to debate this, so it won't be fast at all.
Thank
so
you.
In lieu of Brookfield's mismanagement, is it a good time to repeal that zoning ordinance that allowed us to go up 14 stories?
It may be time to discuss it. It's definitely not part of the negotiation or the process with Brookfield at this point, but
so if is it a possibility though?
It's always a possibility. You can, yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, in reference to your question of allowing people who are not necessarily citizens to vote, I think that's a good idea because it will help get them engaged in a way that they are not engaged right now.
I hope you stay vocal on that because we're going to need people to speak up on that.
Because it's really, 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 really important that they start getting connected and getting engaged and feeling like they're a part of this community, and that's a huge way that happens. Because I remember on VPR there was a story, and they allowed non-citizens to vote in their local and state elections, and it made a huge change. So
Great point.
Really important.
Other places do allow it, and I have to say, as someone who knocks on most every door when I campaign, it is depressing, and actually it hurts personally to meet people who say, God, I wish I could, but I just can't. And maybe you should go talk to my neighbors because I can't vote, so therefore you probably don't want to hear what I have to say. And I'm like, no, actually we definitely want to hear what you say, especially because you can't actually cast your vote. Your voice doesn't get expressed through your vote, so we definitely want to hear what you have to say. But there's a lot of people who I think would participate. I really do. From when I go door to door, that's what I hear. Janet.
I'd like to speak to that because I'm now a U.S. citizen, but wasn't for a long time, and I was doing the community dinner, and I would really did the community dinner. I didn't stay for the NPA because I couldn't vote, and there were times when I talked to people in office, and as soon as they found out that I couldn't vote, you could just see them shut down and like walk away. And not necessarily city councilors here in Burlington, but at the state level, I had people that I was talking to, and it just was like, okay, I can't do anything. I lived in Richmond, that happened there, and so I just didn't participate at all. But now I do, and so I think it's actually is really important. You're paying taxes. I owned a business, and I felt like I didn't have a voice in anything.
Yeah, thank you, Janet. I believe that if we are a democracy, no one's left out. There should be no one left out. And so right now we have 120-ish people who serve on boards and commissions. If you're not a registered voter, you're not allowed to serve. And people who want to serve are told they can't serve. So think about that for a minute, too. Holly.
Just one more thing. The governor is totally against it. The governor basically said, like, oh, well, if you let non-citizens vote, we should let businesses vote. So can you just touch on that? The governor basically compared non-citizen residents to businesses. You know, the slippery slope. If you let non-citizens vote, anybody who owns a business in Burlington will want to vote. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I hope that Governor Scott will remember that the Republicans say that local control is critical and it's important and it's a bedrock value in Vermont. So if we as Burlingtonians say we want it, they should respect our wishes. That's all. Yeah.
Hi, yeah. I really like this resolution. I think it's a really good idea. I think it would be good if we started talking about it as all resident voting and not non-citizen voting. I just think the framing of that is really important in terms of how people receive it.
Nice. Point well taken. I agree with that too. I think that's great. Roger.
Hi, Brian. Thanks. My understanding is Brookfield is giving the city some money for free parking over the holidays. Is that still correct?
Yes, that is part of the deal. Yeah.
Would it be possible to use some of that for free public transport, given that we have a climate emergency and we want to discourage cars going downtown?
I think that should be looked at. I don't know actually if the wording of the agreement says it has to be used for parking, but that should be on the table. I think it's a really good valid point. Mr.
Okay,
Goodtime.
last question.
I know they're going to present about the zero energy plan you're done, but you feel it's appropriate to keep running the McNeil plant in light of it's the biggest greenhouse producer in the state. It's equal to, at least according to 7 days, about 118,000 cars. And it's part of our energy future. If this plan just stays like it is, it's not even mentioned that it might be decommissioned or switched to another less polluting fuel. You think it's just a good idea to kind of not even look at that and have the plan direct itself in other ways?
I think it's a topic that has to be discussed, but I also think that the notion of a district energy connection to the McNeil plant has some value there as well. I have heard that argument made by someone who I think you know quite well. He tried to convince me the other day that if we had just switched over that plant to natural gas, that would be better. There are reasons why that's actually not true at all, and I think I could list a whole bunch of reasons why that's not true. Yeah, all right, we'll talk later. We're going to have this debate. This will go on. All right.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Okay, so here we have Jennifer and Darren from Burlington Electric.
Great. Okay, thanks, John. And thank you, Amanda. We appreciate you putting us on the agenda for tonight. My name is Jennifer Green, and I work for the City of Burlington. I'm housed in the Burlington Electric Department, and my job title is Director of Sustainability and Workforce Vitality. And I'm here with General Manager Darren Springer tonight. We're happy to share the net zero energy roadmap with you, and what we're quite proud of, and we hope you feel the same way. So let's see what the first slide is. I want to give you a sense of what the agenda. I know we've got about 10 minutes, so over the course of that time, Darren will talk a little bit about BED's background. For those of you that don't know about BED, is your municipal electric utility. And then we'll outline some of the key findings of the roadmap and the direction that we hope to take as a city, particularly our transition away from fossil fuels in the heating and ground transportation sector. So a very ambitious sort of carbon reduction strategy. And then Darren will talk a little bit about some of the new incentives that we're offering as we launch into the roadmap. So, great. I'm going to let Darren kick us off here.
Okay. Hey, thanks everybody for having us. It was a really good moment in September to release this net zero energy roadmap. We had the climate strike in Burlington. We had, as Councilor Pine mentioned, the City Council declare a climate emergency. There's a lot of focus on reducing emissions. We as a community have this goal of becoming a net zero energy city by 2030, which means reducing and eventually eliminating fossil fuel use, not just for electricity, but for heating and for ground transportation as well. Heating and transportation are the two biggest emission sectors in Vermont, in the state. So we at Burlington Electric have been working on this plan. For folks who may not know as much about Burlington Electric, we're a public power utility since 1905. About 118 employees. We do run and operate the McNeil biomass plant, as well as the Winooski 1 hydropower plant, and a number of solar projects around the community. We have not raised electric rates since 2009. We're entering our 11th year without having raised electric rates. We are the third largest utility in the state of Vermont, electric utility, and we serve the entire community. So we have a connection with everybody and appreciate being here. Move to the next slide. We are not only an electric utility, we are an energy efficiency utility. So for the rest of the state, Efficiency Vermont provides the energy efficiency services. Here in Burlington, it's Burlington Electric. I would encourage everybody to go to burlingtonelectric.com. You can find all the information in terms of how to contact our energy services team. If you need assistance with anything, if you want to access any of our programs or incentives, if you have a high bill concern, you can contact us through the website. You can also read the roadmap report that we're going to talk about tonight on the website as well. We have a whole net zero energy page. But I think as a community, the thing we can be proud of is we are using roughly 6% less electricity today than we were in 1989. We had an $11.3 million bond that was the kickoff to a significant set of investments in energy efficiency in 1990. If the rest of the country was using 6% less electricity today than in 1989, that's 238 coal plants worth of production annually that you would be talking about getting rid of. So it's not an insignificant accomplishment that we've made on energy efficiency in the community. We're also saving a lot of money annually on customer bills, millions of dollars annually on customer bills by not having to buy additional power, additional transmission build out, et cetera. So the next slide just covers our portfolio of renewable sources, and we've mentioned the McNeil plant, hydropower. We also have power from 3 wind projects, 2 of which are in Vermont, 1 of which is in Maine. And we get a growing slice of our power from solar. Environment America issued a report saying that Burlington's the #1 per capita community in the country, or in New England in solar, and #4 in the country. So we're increasingly seeing a lot of solar projects in Burlington that are contributing to our power demands. And I've mentioned here the goal of becoming a net zero energy city, getting off of fossil fuel in the heating and the ground transportation sectors. And I think the next slide, I'm going to hand it over to Jen to talk about the roadmap a little bit.
Yeah, great. So I think one really important part for us all to think about before we get into what the roadmap illustrates is that we are so privileged in Burlington that we own our electric utility. We are able to design programs and projects based on our own data and information. And when I talk to cities around the country and they are beholden to an investor-owned utility, they don't have the wherewithal to design programs that reflect the needs of their community. So I think it's just really important to remember that Burlington is special and unique because BED is not an investor-owned utility, it's our utility. So, as Darren mentioned, based on our renewable energy portfolio, we felt we were ready and prepared to take our efforts to the next level, which was to transition to net zero energy in the thermal and ground transportation sectors. And we knew that we couldn't do it alone, so we put out a request for proposal, and we received about 13 really solid proposals back. We selected Synapse Energy Economics, a firm based out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. Their subcontractor, the team that looked at the transportation piece of the roadmap, is RSG Systems. They have an office located here in Burlington. So we worked with the team for about a year, and we're pleased, as Darren mentioned, to sort of present the roadmap in September. So a couple of quick graphs on what we learned. This was anecdotal, but really important to be proven, thanks to Synapse's work, that as you can see, the sort of slash line is transportation, but non-Burlington vehicles. So this is mostly people that are driving into town every day. So you can see that's a fairly big piece of the pie. When you combine that with the driving of Burlington vehicles, whether that's you or I, either leaving the city or driving around the city, combine that with the slash line, and you can see indeed the transportation is the largest piece of the puzzle, followed by the commercial buildings, which is the darker of the 2 grays, and the lighter gray being the residential buildings. So because you and I don't have control as much as we might like for vehicles that are housed outside of the city and moving into town, we decided not to focus that part of the plan on the stripes, which leaves the building sector, the residential and the commercial buildings, as the biggest piece of the pie, and what we're really going to need to focus a fair amount of attention on if we're going to indeed transition off of fossil fuels. So, do we have thank you. So here's a high-level overview of what we learned. If you look at the top line, you'll see our business as usual. So if we just sort of keep going at the rate we are, we will reduce, we're far off from reaching our goal, as you can see. If you look down at the darkest green line at the bottom, this is our trajectory, and it's fairly steep, as you can see. It's pretty ambitious to get to 2030. So just curious, we wanted to see what that trajectory would look like if we went out to 2040. Not quite as steep, not quite as bold, but worth just keeping in mind and a nice basis of comparison. A nice piece of this plan is that it really puts us out in front in terms of carbon reduction. So we have a climate action plan for the city. This is, I would say, even bigger and bolder if we can transition to net zero energy. If we can do it by 2030, we will have reduced our greenhouse gases by 69%. I'm looking over at Darren. If we don't reach our goal until 2040, we will have only, which is still pretty ambitious and more than any other city in the country, we will have reduced our emissions by 57. So there are some very positive carbon benefits as well to this net zero energy strategy. So I think this is one of the most important visuals in the plan, and it's, if there's one thing that you want to sort of study and memorize, I think this is it. If you think of our plan as a big pie, 60% of what we're going to have to focus our attention on is the efficient building electrification. And I emphasize efficient because that's going to entail sort of weatherization and tightening up our buildings as well. We need to make them efficient, and then we need to start this electrification process, i.e. moving away from fossil fuels. Not an easy task. We need to have everybody that's in an electric vehicle, excuse me, in an ICE, an internal combustion engine vehicle, transition to electric. That's going to be 20% of that pie. With 15 being that district energy that Councillor Pine referenced earlier today. That's going to be an important component to our success. And then lastly, certainly last but not least, is the important role that alternative transportation is going to need to play. So that's increased biking, increased walking, car sharing, et cetera, to the extent that 15% of vehicle miles traveled per household in the city will have to come into play. So that's sort of the big picture of where we're going, and we're really excited to share it with you. I think equally important is that we're sort of ready to get going. We've got some things in place, and I'm really happy that Darren's going to share with you some of the things that we've recently launched.
So this slide and the next slide are a list of some of our incentive programs that are out there. You can check them all out on burlingtonelectric.com. You can see the roadmap, which had these graphs on burlingtonelectric.com. One point I want to make that's important to us as we think about these incentive programs, why we're offering them, why we want people to participate, is if you spend $1 at the gas station, fueling up a vehicle, 80 cents of that dollar leaves the Vermont economy. We don't produce fossil fuels here. We don't have a heavy economic benefit from using fossil fuels. On the flip side, if you charge up an electric vehicle or an electric bus, which we're going to have 2 this month come into the Green Mountain Transit fleet with BED incentives, or if you charge up an electric bike and you spend $1 with us, 50 cents or more of that dollar staying in the Vermont economy and more than 75 cents staying in the regional economy. So this is an opportunity as we make this transition actually buy local when it comes to energy compared to sending dollars out of state for fossil fuels. We've launched programs across pretty much every sector. If you are looking at doing anything in a building, whether it's weatherization, whether it's going to a heat pump or a more efficient water heater, we have programs around that. For folks who are looking to have electric transportation, I mentioned the buses. We have an e-bike rebate for folks who want to commute with an electric bicycle. We have electric vehicle, both new and pre-owned rebates. We've invested in charging stations around the community. We have 14 of them. We just launched 2 new ones at Main Street in St. Paul, one of which is dedicated for car share members. So if you're a car share member, you'll be able to use, they have a new Nissan Leaf that's going to be charged at that station. And we have about 18 more stations that will be going in over the course of the next year with a specific focus on trying to provide stations at multifamily building locations, which we think are underserved at the moment in terms of charging infrastructure. So we're going to be working on that as well. So this slide here, the next slide, just had a list of some of those incentives. We've even offered incentives for electric lawnmowers, electric lawn equipment, electric forklifts. Basically, if it can be electrified, we're interested in trying to help move to electric and get off of fossil fuel. I know we only had a few minutes, but Jen and I are happy to answer questions on the roadmap or anything else related to BED.
Thanks for coming out to answer some questions. This is not the climate action plan, right? We had one a few years ago. Will we be seeing an update to the climate action plan?
Yeah, as far as I understand, Megan Tuttle is our comprehensive planner, so she has that on her sort of to-do list, and I think we're looking at 2020 for an update of the plan.
Okay, so that will give us an update on where we want to be in terms of emissions, correct?
Yeah, well, yes. It will also talk about waste. The climate action plan looks at, the transportation of our waste to Coventry, for example, and things that aren't included in the net zero energy plan.
Okay. I have a couple other questions, if that's okay. I wonder why public transit wasn't considered, and why the subsidies were for private electric vehicle ownership and not for, including people who don't own a car or who can't afford a car.
Yeah.
Transit is part of the plan, actually. So the alternative transportation section contemplates about a threefold increase in transit supply in the city, so more buses. And we're offering incentives to Green Mountain Transit to bring the first 2 electric buses to the fleet in October, and we're prepared to offer more incentives for more electric buses. So transit's important. I mentioned car share, ride sharing is important, walking, biking, all of that is part of this plan. And you can, as you read the plan, you'll see pieces of that in there.
Okay, that's cool. And one other question on transport. The airport wasn't included. Moreau said that because there's nothing we can do. I sort of beg to differ. There's trains. There's a lot of other ways to reduce air traffic and the climate effect of air travel. So will there be more? Will trains be addressed, or will the airport be addressed, perhaps in the climate action plan, or to an update to this?
Yeah, so in terms of air travel, we didn't address that in the roadmap. It's the last inventory that I looked at for the state of Vermont, which was 2015's the last data that they've provided. I think there will hopefully be new data soon. Aviation was roughly 1% of the state's emissions total, not just the Burlington Airport. So it's a smaller sector, but we know internationally there's been some growth in emissions in aviation. That said, there's some innovation happening there. There's some discussion around electric and other types of alternative forms of transportation for aviation. Certainly there's advocates for rail as well. Our focus was really on the heating and ground transportation sectors primarily because of 2 things. The first is we have tools, I think, not only as a community but as an electric utility to tackle emissions in those sectors. And also those are the 2 biggest, I think they roughly together make up about 3/4 of Vermont's emissions now. So that's the area where we thought we could have the biggest impact. But there are other areas that could be addressed in the climate action plan or other efforts.
Because given the climate emergency and the need to get down to 0 emissions, we will eventually, assuming electric airplanes aren't feasible, we will have to eventually sort of close the airport, right?
Well, it was interesting. I was over at the airport the other day, and there's actually a company that's testing out electric planes, essentially. Right. So they were, they were actually, I think they were like 6 to 8 passenger, but they were small and they could be moved in a different way than planes that move today. So I'm not sure that there wouldn't be some form of innovation in that space as well. Yeah.
I have a comment and a question. The first one is I wanted to thank BED because I just got my bicycle converted, and you actually didn't allow that, but after pursuing it, you've agreed to do that because none of the bike shops in Burlington will do the e-bike conversion, but they will in Virgins.
really need to stay in that bucket. That's not to say that we can't partner with DPW, and I would mention that one important part of the plan, at least that I feel, is that we are advocating that the Bike Walk Master Plan, which was approved by the City Council, actually come to fruition. So that's, I think, as we can, as a group, sort of work to continue to push on ensuring that that plan comes to light. And again, it is reiterated in the roadmap. But unfortunately, I'm sorry that the EEU money, the energy efficiency money, really stays within BED to reduce electric load, not something that...
So we need to make modifications to state law before you can do that. It's a good thing we have our state rep here to take notes on that. Thank you, Kurt.
And I'll just really quickly give a quick update on district energy. District energy would begin with a pipe taking waste heat and steam from McNeil, in all likelihood, up to UVM Medical Center and possibly some UVM buildings. That would be the first essentially tranche of work that we would have to do. The great thing about getting that done, if we can manage to get that done, is not only is it probably the single biggest step we could take as a community to reduce emissions, that's the amount of energy that we would be reducing from fossil fuel would be very significant. But once you have that infrastructure in, it can be expanded over time. The city of Montpelier now has a district heating system with biomass that incrementally connects to more buildings over time. The key is to get the thing started and to get that initial connection up to a larger energy user like the hospital or UVM, and then have that infrastructure in place, and then it can be expanded and potentially other resources beyond McNeil could be fed in, whether that's from the wastewater treatment plant or from a geothermal system or other types of renewable energy systems. So we are working very hard on it. We expect to have an update for the City Council in the next couple of months. Yep.
Okay, so thank you, Darren Springer, the general manager. And if people have any extra questions, I would probably suggest Jennifer Green, who's the director of sustainability at Burlington Electric.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Steve Goodkind, would you like to? So now we're having a presentation on the Pine Street Coalition. So I'll rely on Steve to describe what the Pine Street Coalition is.
I'm probably not going to do that. Just one more note, if you're really wondering about wood, read up on wood as a fuel for generating electricity. It is the dirtiest fuel we have. And if it's going to be used for district energy, it's going to be dirty. So I wouldn't get too excited about it. I would really start looking and see what wood is all about. It's not so bad to burn it in the house, but for generating electricity, it is bad. Anyway, my name's Steve Goodkind. I was the city engineer and public works director in the city for about 30 years. On the agenda, it looks like I'm going to talk about the Southern Connector or Champlain Parkway and road safety, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about something else, which actually is probably much more important, and actually says more about not just the road, but what we are as a city. I'm going to talk about something called environmental justice. The connector is a road product that's been around for a long time. During most of its history, it was designed to take traffic out of neighborhoods, both high and moderate income neighborhoods, low income neighborhoods, neighborhoods that are predominantly minority residents. That was its job. About 10 years ago, the federal government, in what I think was one of the worst decisions I've seen them make, decided that our road was not going to remove traffic from the neighborhoods by King and Maple Street. It's going to go through those neighborhoods. It was supposed to go around them, it's going to go through them. The city tried to fight that decision, and I'll talk about environmental justice in a minute. We tried to use environmental justice as one of our arguments, and we were told at the time that the mandate for considering environmental justice in road projects was kind of weak at that time and wasn't going to be considered, and this road was going to be built. It's going to divert traffic from the neighborhoods in the far south end, down by Ferguson, Home, Flynn, but it was going to go through on Pine Street, through the neighborhood at Pine and King. Okay. Times have changed, though. Two things have happened since that decision. Well, three things have happened. Once, you hear a lot from the mayor and his minions that this road project is about to go forward. I managed that project for 15 years. I don't think it's going anywhere. And the reason it's not going anywhere is because of environmental justice. What is environmental justice? Well, I'll tell you what it isn't. Those of you that are familiar with what happened to the urban renewal area in downtown Burlington about 50 years ago, where in the name of renewing the city, improving the ability to have a commercial downtown, we demolished homes and moved people out of the downtown. That's the opposite of environmental justice. What environmental justice says is when the government engages in a project, it does not disproportionately impact low-income and minority residents. That's what environmental justice is. And in the time since they decided our road was going to go through Pine Street and hasn't been built yet, the laws have changed, and laws are very strong now. And they do mandate that you have to consider environmental justice with a project. And the reason I'm bringing this up now is a group of us, we're called the Pine Street Coalition, filed some papers in federal court, and before the case went forward, the Department of Justice looked at those papers. They would be the ones who represent the Federal Highway Agency in their side of the suit. They looked at it and said, well, at least as far as environmental justice, we agree with you. It has not been looked at, and it must be looked at. And despite all the optimism road's about to go forward, that look is happening right now. And we don't know the results of it yet, and the process of actually looking at it, I think, is highly flawed. But there's an opportunity now, through environmental justice, to see that this road becomes a much better road than it is now. It's not going to be an easy process. It could be painful. But there is an opportunity now, if we're successful, this road will basically go back and have to do another environmental impact statement, look at other options, and there are options. And there used to be road design options that met environmental justice standards that the city did support and pushed for a long time until this last decision came along. So I think it says something about a community. We want to be a community which just ignores environmental justice as a concept and lets this road go through as planned, and it's not even a close call. I'll tell you the example. In the south end, Home and Flint Avenue will see traffic probably halved or better. The traffic's going to be reduced. At King, Maple, Pine, it's going to go up by a third. So that's the dichotomy. King, Maple, minority, low-income neighborhood, traffic increase. Flynn, Home, moderate income, maybe higher income levels, decrease. That's the opposite of environmental justice. And if we let that happen, that's the kind of community we are. I think it can be stopped. People might wonder, what can you do about it? Well, one thing you can do, and one of the people is sitting right here, talk to your counselors. They still have influence on this project. It is not a done deal. And they can listen to the mayor and say, well, we're just a bunch of NIMBYs. We're not a bunch of NIMBYs. This is serious business. Department of Justice is the one that said this has to be done. And if we just ignore it or try and blow it off and build this thing, shame on us. But there is a chance to do this road, the way I say it is, to do it right the first time. It's been around for a long time. Again, it's been around 40, 45 years. For 15 years, I managed the project. And I was the manager when the federal government made this decision, which everyone in the city working on the project, including the people that work on it today, know was a bad decision. This road is a badly designed road because it goes through the neighborhood of Maple and King and Pine Street. Everybody knows that. And all I'm saying is, when you hear that it's a done deal, it isn't. If you can talk to your counselors, if you believe in environmental justice, ask them to get behind us, and let's do this right. Now, one other thing, I think Tony might have something he wants to say at the end here, but I'm tired. I've said enough, but think about environmental justice with this and maybe with other projects. Let's not let this one just slip through the cracks. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Steve Goodkind. Okay, so our last agenda item. Oh, are there any questions? Sorry about that. Okay, so this was a presentation on Steve Goodkind on environmental justice, or was this Pine Street Coalition on environmental? Okay. Okay. Okay, so we're going to move right along to Kurt McCormick, who's a state representative from, 6-3, I think? And he's going to talk about state housing priorities. Okay, I'm sorry.
Hi, thank you for staying so long. Yes, I have to, first thing is, well, Brian Sheena is at a, what, intelligent, what do we call it? No, I know where it is. I'm forgetting what it's called. Artificial intelligence. He's at an artificial intelligence task force meeting. And it's not... Yep, and it's not in Burlington. It's down in, I think, Manchester or Middlebury or someplace. And Jill Kowinski is homesick, and I don't know where Selena is. I haven't seen her and she didn't write it. Okay, I need to make this fast as usual. But there's so much to talk about, especially with the presentation before last. Let me just, a couple of quick comments on those things. Oh, she's gone. Oh, there she is. Of all the people who are employed in Burlington, 73% don't live in Burlington. So the woman with the white hair, she was absolutely right. It's a really good point. That's our major source of CO2 emissions. They don't even live here. It's people commuting, most of them all by themselves in their cars. This fellow, he's here. It was this fellow here, something about, the car dealers, yeah. So we are what we call a California state. You probably heard a little bit about that in the news, because the president is trying to strip their right to regulate cars. They have the legal right, it's a federal law, and states either go with EPA or they go with California. And we are one of the states that go with California. And they're better, they're more stringent, and they're the leading edge on car emissions, and always have been. This is actually not new, but they do CO2 emissions now. And you might remember car manufacturers sued them on that. The Clean Air Act didn't mention that. The Supreme Court disagreed and said it's air pollution, they can regulate it. So car dealers have to sell a certain number of EVs, electric vehicles, in our state. Bus stops, totally agree, and we're working on that. Yep. Okay, so I think the first thing we're going to do when we get back in session in January is pass the minimum wage and trying one more time to come up with a minimum wage that the governor might be convinced to sign, or that he vetoes and that we can override the veto. We actually have the votes to do that, but that's what we need to, that minimum wage has to be able to at least override the veto. Otherwise, we're just doing it to make the governor look bad, and that's, I suppose, one strategy. But we don't get a minimum wage increase out of that. Okay, let me just tell you what I've been doing lately. As you might remember, I'm chairing the Transportation Committee in the House now, and I've only done 1 year in this position, and I mainly have been trying to earn credibility with the Republicans and others. It's a big committee, and it's got a Democratic majority. There's one progressive on it, but there are Republicans, and it's not the strongest committee, frankly. There isn't media here, right? It could be stronger. I needed to do that work first, and this coming year, we are ready to have a climate agenda for transportation. Transportation is the #1 source of CO2 emissions in our whole state, and it is here in Burlington as well. So I've been meeting with different people. Greg, I meet with Tony almost weekly, and other advocates to see what people think we can do, what they want us to do. And I've got a long list, which I don't have time for now. Would you believe Amanda gave me 5 minutes, and that was when I was supposed to share this with 4 others. That's like, we had a minute each. Yeah, 5 people, 5 minutes. So, okay. All right. Okay. All right, so I know I'm taking those 5 minutes. So I'm not going to list all these things, but I'm going to try to do them. And I want to ask you to join us and contact me. I'm happy to sit down with you at a cafe, and we'll talk about, or any place, and we'll talk about ideas that you might have. It's really, I think Vermont really can be a leader here. Our emissions, people will say, what's the difference if we stop all our emissions? It's only so much. That's not the point. The reason Vermont should act aggressively and seriously and quickly is not because of our emissions. It's because the other states and cities and most of the other countries need to see that these things can happen. And if we don't, frankly, if we just leave it the way it's going now, what the environmental community wants to do is electrify everything. And that's, you heard it few minutes ago. So that's basically what we're doing, okay? Most of this country still generates electricity from fossil fuels. As a matter of fact, we have a lot of brand new natural gas plants because it's cheaper. And that's the only thing. The only reason we don't have district heating yet is because, Greg, is because natural gas is too cheap. Otherwise, we would have it by now. That's how I look at it. That's why we do it. I am one who is concerned that we are blowing actually a golden opportunity if all we do is electrify. If we see this problem as, oh, these corporations years ago chose the wrong fuel, they got into fossil fuels instead of other energy, and all we need to do is have a drop-in replacement, it's called electricity, and the problem solved. That doesn't solve congestion, that doesn't solve other air pollution, and frankly, if we have a lot of EVs driving around instead of electric vehicles, instead of gas cars, you know they're going to drive a lot more. That's already a fact. EV owners drive more. They drive more miles than they did before they bought that car. Why? The car costs a fortune, but once you have it, it's very, very cheap to operate. And what would you do if you spent $40,000 on something? You'd use it. And environmentalists will say, oh, Kurt, don't worry, we're taking the EV. Don't worry because we're taking an EV. So we could make a much better world that's not just electrified cars. It's transit, biking, and walking. And I'll tell you one proposal that, thank you. I never got an applause before, that's great. And I wish Perry were here tonight because one of the things that I'm going to try to do is have statewide policy that all transit is free. Because people ride it when it's free. Okay. Questions? Yes, thank you.
So you're talking about more transit, so loud. How do you feel about the Bud cars, the regional transit sort of between Burlington and Montpelier?
Yeah.
Is that still on the table? How do you feel about it?
It is, and I had to fight harder for that than anything else. The legislature is very strange that way. It's transitional for sure. They're diesel, they're fossil fuel, but they're pretty neat. They're self-propelled, and they actually get very good gas mileage. A lot of people, private railroad is the biggest problem there, and some federal regulations, but it's not dead. We're working on it. One of the things I hope we can do is start fixing up the track between Burlington and Essex Junction, so the Ethan Allen Express, which is going to come here in 2 years, will not be stored in Burlington. It'll be stored either in Essex or up in St. Albans. But we need to fix the track first. It's just 8 miles. Yeah. The Ethan Allen Express is definitely coming. Yeah, in less than 2 years now.
And let's just fix the track to Montreal too. I'm going to change the subject a little and address something that you didn't talk about. I am not an anti-development person. I'm for good development. And the thing that makes my blood pressure go up at night is when I hear about the legislature trying to change Act 250 to make it easier for developers to develop. They already did it for downtowns, and now you see what we have. I think the disaster that is downtown Burlington could have been prevented if there were a slow, deliberative Act 250 process. They were able to weasel out of it. I want to send a message to our legislators that their job is not to make things easier for developers. That's not the big problem in this state that they would have you have it be. Your job is to protect our health and our safety and our environment, and that's what Act 250 is there for. So please, when that subject comes up, I hope our delegation will look at it very critically.
Well, thank you for that, and I agree with you. To be fair, I wasn't there when Act 250, when they made those changes. 10 or 15 years ago, that project would have needed an Act 250 permit.
Right.
And what happened was the legislature, they were trying to do things to steer development into downtown. That's the good thing. And we have designated downtowns, ours is one. And unfortunately, Act 250 is seen as detrimental. to a developer. And therefore, if you know that you can build, say, in Burlington, you can do that without an Act 250 permit. And if you want to build the same thing out in Williston, you will need a permit. There's a savings of time and a savings of money. That's not to disagree with what you're saying, but that was their thinking. And I've never liked it, and I don't think Act 250 should be seen as something that you don't want to do.
It might be more difficult for developers, but it should be. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. But we're trying to get all development into downtowns and village centers. And so we don't have, Williston has an Act 250 permit. And all that stupid permit does is paint the buildings brown. So about 20 years ago, I introduced, at least 20 years ago, a bill to eliminate the aesthetics criterion from Act 250 because it sweats the small stuff and the wrong stuff, and Act 250 should be the way you described it. But all it really does, it makes requirements for stoplights, adding lanes to highways, and it requires buildings to be, quote, earth brown or earth tone. Why do you think the Home Depot, it doesn't have its corporate orange color on the outside? Act 250, isn't that great? Act 250 should have said no to the whole project up there.
It seems, when I read it, there were like 10 or 12 environmental and health and safety standards that developers had to meet before they
Yes, but the aesthetics is the strongest one. And half that criteria, a permit cannot be denied on, it can only be conditioned. In other words, traffic is one. You can't say no. The commission cannot say no. What they can say is, yes, if. That's a condition. If you build a new lane. So they build a new lane. Act 250, like zoning, is sometimes not good for the environment. Yeah, okay.
Is there any...
5 minutes or something.
What do you think is the feasibility of some kind of electrified light rail serving our more urbanized communities in Vermont?
Yeah, the place to do it, I think, is Main Street, especially when the Ethan Allen comes in. Main Street, straight up, Main Street landing, or where the Union Station is now, which is at the foot of Main Street. You've already got the circle. Whenever I go through that, I envision a trolley making the circle and going back up the hill. So it would go right through downtown and up to UVM and maybe out to South Burlington and turn around. I think we could do that. Very expensive. I think Tony knows more about it than I would, but it's something. It's a dream that we should, I think, take seriously. Unfortunately, it's expensive. So what we're doing instead is electrifying rubber-wheeled buses. But that's so much better to electrify that way. You don't have the battery issue and the range issue. So I'll tell you a quick thing. The biggest thing, the reason the Ethan Allen Express is taking as long as it is if anyone's been through Middlebury lately, right downtown on the Green, you see tremendous project going on. Those are the railroad tracks. It's sort of a tunnel. It's not covered yet, but it's a big ditch, and it's always been there. And we have to make it deeper for new trains. We have to make it deeper because the federal government doesn't let us just run Amtrak on it. It has to be brought up to a higher standard. And with that higher standard, someday that could be electrified. With the overhead, that's how it's done now. But you need more height than a lot of our bridges have. That's the thing. It was a lot of money when Amtrak just went from New Haven, Connecticut to Boston. It used to be that all the Boston trains were diesel until they got to New Haven and they changed to electric, like ours does now. All the Boston trains used to do that. Now they don't have to. But I have to be realistic. That's one, that'll be a while.
Okay, we got to stick to the legislative update. So on, if light rail is it wouldn't work because it's expensive. We do have in Vermont a lot of ski lifts. And I was wondering if anybody has looked into putting a gondola, and this isn't my idea, but putting a gondola from the railroad station up to UVM. We should be thinking imaginatively. Yeah. If we want to save on emissions and we want to reduce congestion, let's think outside the box. This is an idea that would be very consistent with a lot of
transit in Vermont on mountains, but this is even better.
Great idea, I like it. Okay, that's it.
Anything else, or are we all set?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kurt McCormick. Okay, who has the door prize? Who has the door prize? Who does the door prize?
Prize. Oh, door prize. Okay, well, actually, Kurt, don't go away. Kurt, we usually have the last speaker do the door prize. So does anybody, sorry, I'm a little off my game tonight, I've been sick. Does anybody who didn't put their name in the door prize but stuck it out want to put their name in for the door prize? Interns, anybody?
And don't leave because
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and then we'll have Kurt draw your name, and usually I remind people, but...
Okay, so before anybody
pretty high
leaves, so
chance.
we will need help putting away all the tables and chairs. Thank you.
Okay, you can run it up. You wanna run- Oh, we have one more. We have one more. We have one more. Thank you. I know, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, and the drum roll is...
Sean Mellon.
Sean, and it's his birthday. Oh, he
Okay, thanks everyone. Sean Mellon is a winner of the door prize. We'll see you next
Table
month.
and chair helpers, before you do anything, our furniture gets beat up a lot in right around this time of night when everybody wants to go home. So the idea of slamming the tables onto their sides, you will see that there are dents in the sides of the tables already. So just be gentle. Everything can be done without forcing. The chairs go on the chair dollies in stacks of 10.